In Britain, 76,000 children go missing every year. By the end of this programme, 13 more will have disappeared. Most are found in a few days, but not all. In March 2002, the disappearance of one teenage girl shocked the nation.
A search is going on for a girl of 13 who's missing from her home in Surrey. Amanda Dowler failed to return from school on Thursday afternoon.
Milly, darling, if you are watching or listening to this, we all love you and we really miss you.
But it was to no avail.
Scenes of crime officers and a variety of scientists have been examining human remains throughout the day.
From missing person to murder. The hunt for Milly Dowler's killer was the biggest in the history of the investigating force.
If we don't apprehend this person, someone else is going to die.
But it's not the story you think you know. It's one of confidential meetings, covert surveillance, and once secret files never broadcast before.
You can't discover something like that and not do anything about it. That's all I'd like to say on that.
In this programme, we hear the truth of what really happened.
It was a mess. There were no clear lines of inquiry.
And we reveal why it took almost a decade to bring Milly's murderer to justice. A dangerous killer who prowled the streets.
What did you say?
That I think I know who might have killed her.
It's a story of murder.
Potentially there was a serial killer.
And we simply had no idea who had done it.
Malpractice.
We absolutely felt we were above the law, and we were above the law.
And missed opportunities.
Had they joined up all the dots, it could have led to his arrest much earlier, and that could have saved a lot of other people being attacked by him.
Walton-on-Thames as a whole is a lovely, good-class Surrey town. Commute about main line into London, and it is a very safe place.
What strikes you is the ordinariness of it all. This is the epitome of suburbia. Quiet, leafy streets, neat, orderly houses, eminently middle class. We've got boys and girls walking home from school. Not a care in the world, ambling down the street.
It's an ordinary Thursday afternoon in early spring. Milly Dowler, a 13-year-old girl, is about to leave school in Weybridge, a few miles from home. Her best friend Hannah is usually by her side.
We just felt that you didn't need to worry about everybody else because we were confident in our friendship and the solidity of the friendship that it didn't really matter.
This home movie shows Milly Dowler as a happy teenager relaxing in her room without a care in the world.
She's hard to describe because she was very vulnerable at some times and very sensitive, but equally just mad as a box of frogs, just really energetic, always joking, singing, drawing, dancing. She just matched me because I was equally crazy, really. Felt like a regular day. Milly and I had planned to do our art homework at the end of the day, but I actually got asked to be in a sporting event after school. So Milly just regularly got the train home. So just bog standard, really. No weird feelings, no premonitions of anything to be going wrong.
Stand well back on platform A.
We know that when Milly's left school, she got on the train with friends at Weybridge. She got off a stop earlier than she would normally do at Walton, and she went to have something to eat with her friends. And from there, she called her dad to let him know that she was walking from Walton to home. She walked down Station Approach, and there was a friend from school in the bus stop on the left-hand side of the road as Milly walked down. She saw Milly walk down the road.
In the short time it takes Milly's friend to board the bus and look out of the window to where Milly should be, from this very stretch of a busy main road, Milly has vanished into thin air.
She looked for Milly and she didn't see her. She was gone.
Milly has now been missing for over 3 hours. At the Dowler family home, concern is growing. As the skies darken at 7 p.m, Milly's father, Bob Dowler, calls the police.
The first few hours of any missing person inquiry are crucial.
Chief Crime Correspondent Jeff Edwards has contacts at Surrey Police. They let him know what's happening. Press and TV crews descend on Walton-on-Thames in droves as police search teams are mobilised.
An enormous police operation was mounted straight away to try and find out what had happened to her. They spoke to all her friends that she'd travelled to the station with. Uniformed police officers were knocking on doors saying, "Has anybody seen this young woman?"
Police are concentrating their search around Walton-on-Thames station, where Milly and 2 school friends got off the train shortly before she disappeared.
Even though this is a busy street and there were plenty of people about, the police couldn't find anybody at all who'd even seen Milly. There were no clues at all to her disappearance.
Those who know Milly well are sure something is terribly wrong.
Instantly, alarm bells were ringing because it's so out of her nature to not tell her parents where she is. Something's happened.
The search for Milly intensifies. Surrey Police name it Operation Ruby.
Very quickly, everybody came to realise that this was a huge case and resources were poured in. It wasn't only officers from the major crime team who were the lead investigators on it. It was also the local officers that lived in the local area.
I remember personally attending a press briefing with Surrey Police about this case, where they talked to us about, what they'd done, in terms of speaking to as many of her friends as possible.
And they just wanted to get a lead, to get something that would point us in the direction of what had happened to Milly.
Did she have a secret boyfriend that she might have run away with? Was she depressed? Might she have, gone and taken her own life? And I don't suppose there was anybody in the country by the end of a couple of weeks who didn't know Milly was missing and what she looked like.
All eyes are suddenly on Surrey Police, a small suburban force which enlists help from locals and volunteers. Desperate for any footage that might have captured her, police search for CCTV cameras close to where Milly was last seen.
This building that's under reconstruction at the moment was once upon a time a bird's eye frozen food factory, and on the roof was a CCTV surveillance camera. They asked to see the film from that camera. Sure enough, they got good footage back from it, but the snag was that camera was gimbaled in such a way that it rotated through a 360-degree arc for sort of 50 seconds of that sweep. This vital section of the road wasn't covered. So frustratingly for the police, when the camera came round to where they hoped they would see Milly, there was nothing at all.
Detectives conclude that whatever happened to Milly took place in the 50 seconds the camera was looking away. The schoolgirl seems to have vanished from the face of the earth without a trace, leaving the investigating officers with literally nothing to go on.
We have nothing that gives us any positive indication that she's gone off of her own volition. Equally, we have no positive information that she has been taken off the street and abducted. At this time, all of our lines of inquiry are open.
With the Surrey Police investigation struggling for leads, locals start to fear the worst.
You look at all the circumstances, she'd taken nothing with her except the clothes she stood up in. There was no evidence that she'd taken any money, any possessions that she particularly liked, apart from a mobile phone.
Her mobile phone, which her parents are constantly calling.
Milly, darling, if you are watching or listening to this, Mum, Dad, Gemma, Granny, And all the family want you to know that we all love you and we really miss you.
But while the world watches and waits, a separate investigation is going on, run by journalists and private investigators who think that they have solved the mystery.
They thought, we've cracked it. We've cracked this big, horrendous case.
In the days after Milly Dowler's disappearance, and with police making little progress, Britain's tabloid press becomes obsessed with the story. And one paper, with almost 10 million readers, rules the roost.
The News of the World was an extraordinarily popular paper, and every week they would have a story which set the agenda, and generally the other papers would follow on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that week. It was an extraordinarily powerful paper.
The driving force behind this remarkable paper was its editor, Rebecca Brooks. 2 years before Milly's disappearance, she had launched a campaign to unmask convicted paedophiles by changing the law that protected their anonymity. Prompted by the murder of 8-year-old Sarah Payne, they called their campaign Sarah's Law. Veteran tabloid journalist Paul McMullen worked on the paper at the time.
After the horrible death of Sarah Payne, Rebecca Brooks was on an absolute mission to uncover every bloody paedophile in the entire country.
It whipped up a storm of anger in the British public. Enraged vigilantes took to the streets targeting suspects.
So you have suddenly Milly Dowler disappearing, so Rebecca's immediately on the case. That's my kind of story. Let's set the agenda. Let's find the bloody girl. We want to be heroes again.
The all-powerful News of the World don't just want to report on the case, they want to solve it. Their sister paper, The Sun, overshadows Surrey Police by publishing millions of their own missing posters and offering a huge reward. Paul Samrai is a convicted criminal turned newspaperman. He knows just how far tabloids like the News of the World would go to get the scoop.
Working for the News of the World sent a lot of people bonkers. Put tremendous stress on people. You were under tremendous pressure to perform. You were paid well. But my God, did you have to work for that? It was almost like you had to dedicate your life. It was like a cult. I think that's the best way that I can put it. Working for the News of the World was like a cult, with the supremo guru being Mr. Rupert Murdoch, and the sort of acolytes under that guru were the editors. And it reflected, you know, if the editor was under pressure, that reverberated all the way down to the troops on the ground. I felt the pressure when I was there, you know, on the job. My God, you would hear the calls, the constant calls. Where are you now? Have you got it? What are you doing? What's next? Why haven't you got it? Why haven't you done this?
As the weeks wear on, and with pressure building, journalists and investigators target Milly's friends.
They were on the doorstep of the school premises pretty quickly. Never on the premises, but always pretty much at the school gates. So there was no avoiding them. They were asking everyone and anyone if they knew Milly. And I know our friendship group were upset that there were quite a few random people, not necessarily from our school, but from other local schools, doing articles about Milly and knowing Milly, and you know, people going, who is that person? So we've got in here lots of news clippings.
But with Milly missing, the media can still be useful too.
My mum was like, we need to do everything we can to support the Dowlers. So I did a lot going on TV, doing appeals in the paper.
You read a paper or you see the news and you think, God, that's awful, and then you forget about it. But now it's happened to my best friend. It's really hard to come to terms with it because it feels like a nightmare, and I can't tell the difference between the nightmare and the reality. The things that were going through my head were just things that I really do not want to happen, and I just hope that they're not going to happen.
If it meant that it got Milly's face out there, and it meant that either, you know, she was too hot to handle, because at the time it was a I hoped that she was still alive and somebody would notice her.
If someone has taken Milly, God forbid, what would you say to that person?
Just find it in your heart somewhere to let her go and give her back to her family, because the pain and just the emotions running through the family and the friends and everyone, really, I can tell, is unbearable.
It's always very difficult to see families make press appeals. You know it's the worst time of their life, and yet they're desperate for any news, so they would do anything and put themselves forward and put themselves in that stressful situation because they want their daughter back. And who wouldn't?
Please phone us and let us know, let the police know. Any information, however small or insignificant it may seem, must be vital in this. We just desperately need your help.
The Dowlers are constantly ringing Milly's phone, day after day. In emotional footage from their appearance at the Leveson inquiry, they carefully explain what they thought was going on.
At first we were able to leave messages, and then her voicemail became full.
Yes.
And then you rang, and then you just got the recorded. We are unable to leave messages at the moment. And this was gone, so I was used to hearing that.
The mailbox you have called is full.
But then, suddenly, there is a ray of hope.
On March the 24th, they rang through to leave a message again, and they found that it was no longer full. They presumed that she had picked up her voicemail messages, and therefore that she was still alive.
It clicked through onto her voicemail, so I heard her voice.
Yes.
And it was just like I jumped. She's picked up her voicemails, Bob. She's alive.
But it might be someone else who is picking up Milly's voicemails. On April the 14th, one newspaper runs a sensational story.
The News of the World had found a message that appeared to be really, really significant from a business in Telford in Shropshire that appeared to be offering Milly a job in their business.
Oh yeah, this is the News of the World story which appeared on the 14th of April, which actually quotes the message with the person from the employment agency saying, "Hello, Mandy, we're ringing because we have some interviews starting. Can you call me back? Thank you. Bye-bye." The News of the World got very excited about this message. They thought, right, this is our exclusive. We send half a dozen people up there, we'll find her. We've cracked it. We've cracked this big, horrendous case.
It looked as if Milly was alive and that she was being offered a job. It's a world-beating story.
Stories like this one were obtained by a shadowy network of men and women. If you needed the information and had the money, it seemed anything was possible.
These are a list of probably the best known of the PIs.
PIs, or private investigators, were hired by the newspapers to obtain secret or privileged information.
You've got people who've got connections with phone companies, with finding out about cars, DVLA, and then people who, within that network, are phone tappers, specialist tracers who can get hold of all records. They were providing a service which was accepted throughout Fleet Street. It was accepted as the norm.
One private investigator, Glenn Mulcair, supplied what he called research and information to the News of the World in return for a 6-figure salary.
You would not be able to kick off an investigation unless you had these type of services that you could readily and easily rely on.
And it wasn't just the famous who were fair game.
And then we get to Milly Dowler. So, you know, it was in the public, it's a big case.
The News of the World story about Milly's voicemail caused a sensation, but the reality was more alarming. 3 months after her disappearance, Surrey police finally have a working theory for what has happened to Milly.
We've worked extensively through a number of different hypotheses to try to work out exactly what we believe has happened to Amanda, and we're now working on the principle that we believe that she's been abducted by a chance abductor.
And if she has been abducted, Surrey police have already missed a key detail that could have changed everything. In the days after she had gone missing, the News of the World had somehow heard Milly Dowler's voicemails. It was thanks to a secret technique known only to a handful of private investigators.
When you get a new mobile phone, there is a default PIN code which gives you access to your voicemail messages. Most people didn't realise that they could change their PIN setting. Most people just use the default automatically. So if somebody else rang into that number and got through to the voicemail, you could then trigger the recital of the voicemail messages. It was a very quick way of getting a story. You could ring up a celebrity's number, access their voicemail, and you would hear maybe somebody quite surprising speaking to them. They then thought, well, we can really go to town on this.
The News of the World has got hold of Milly's number from a child at her school. Then, hearing a message for her, they run a story implying that Milly may be alive and well. But that story is about to come unstuck.
What they were really hoping for is that they would have a fantastic scoop, and it would have been a fantastic scoop. It turns out, of course, they were barking up the wrong tree for the wrong reasons.
It turned out the person the message was intended for was a woman called Nana, who seemingly had a number very similar to Milly Dowler's number, and one of the digits maybe had been written down wrong. So it was a straightforward mistake.
But by publishing their story, the News of the World is letting Surrey police in on their illicit activities. This information from secret files is Surrey Police's account of contact between them and the News of the World. It's information which was kept from the public for 10 years and finally revealed by MPs in 2012 as part of an investigation into phone hacking. Surrey Police's letter claims that, on the 13th of April 2002, the News of the World contacted them to say they had a recording of a voicemail message. But it wasn't until a week later that they finally played it to the police.
The only way they could have achieved that was through hacking into Milly Dowler's phone. Now, instead of actually investigating that, in effect, it seems as if they turned a blind eye to it in order to appease the media.
And a further inquiry, a decade after the events, confirms that Surrey police failed to investigate or prosecute the News of the World for phone hacking. The report also suggests that the police were almost in fear of the press. In April 2002, it seems it's not the police who are calling the shots in the investigation, it's the all-powerful tabloids. And veteran News of the World hack Paul McMullen has no problem with that.
We absolutely felt we were above the law, and we were above the law. If you could produce a News of the World press card, it was a get-out-of-jail card. For about 30 years, the News of the World and The Sun and Murdoch's empire had helped the successive British Prime Minister get elected. And because of that, the police, through the government, would kind of back off, leave them alone. They can pretty well do anything. And I remember being lots of car chases, going through red lights. It simply didn't matter. And we could spin number plates. We could ask policemen, oh, can you give us a number plate on that one? And we'd get it. And, you know, the senior detectives and the chief officers were going out for drinks with Rebecca Brooks and Andy Coulson and the editors of the News of the World, and they were dining in each other's houses. And if that's happening at the top, that filters down to the bottom. And yeah, there was real deference shown to News of the World reporters by the police.
As the months wear on, the relentless search for Milly continues.
The team literally just didn't have any days off, very, very long days. And all you would do is have your evening meal, or whenever you could have it, go to bed, get up the next morning, straight to work, back in the door at 10 o'clock at night. That's what it would be like.
But a vital lead had already been missed.
There in fact had been an incident about 3 miles away from the exact spot where Milly disappeared. An 11-year-old schoolgirl called Rachel Cowles was walking along this road when a small red saloon car pulled up next to her, and a man ran down the window and said to her, "Hello, I'm your new next-door neighbour. Would you like me to give you a lift home?" And she said, "No, thank you. No, I'm just close to my home. I'll make my own way home on my own." And she told her mother what had happened. So her mother actually did call the police.
Rachel's mother told the police about the stranger in the red car.
The attempt to abduct Rachel came exactly 24 hours before Milly was abducted in Walton.
The phone call to the police was logged, but it didn't reach the team investigating Milly's disappearance.
Tragically, this was not followed up. So obviously, had the police had the resources to follow it up at the time, it might have changed things a great deal.
The team investigating Milly's disappearance just a few miles away was not informed about the attempted abduction of another schoolgirl. And a prime suspect might have just slipped through the net. But this wasn't the first time Surrey police had been accused of mishandling crimes against children. In the 1950s, the Walton Hop opened its doors. Billed as Britain's first disco, local teenagers packed the dance floor. But in the 70s and 80s, there were whispers that men from show business used it as a place to groom and abuse children. This was an era when celebrities knew their fame kept them safe, and no questions were asked. After the Walton Hop closed, children who were abused there finally came forward as adults. In 2001, just before Milly Dowler's disappearance, Surrey police launched Operation Arundel to bring paedophiles operating at the Walton Hop to justice. Former Radio 1 DJ Chris Denning was convicted. 4 of his assaults took place at the Walton Hop. Music mogul Jonathan King was sentenced to 7 years in 2001. But in 2018, a new case against Jonathan King collapsed, and the trial judge blamed Surrey police. The judge said that Surrey had failed to investigate historic claims against Jimmy Savile and tried to prevent a report into that failure being seen by King's defence. The damning report said that Surrey handled interviews with victims of abuse so badly they were unreliable. So in 2002, when Milly disappeared, some forces are already questioning Surrey police's methods.
A few bits and pieces of memorabilia here. Former Chief Superintendent's cap. And then there's my old warrant card. As you'll notice, I look very young in that.
Another police force is carrying out a routine review of Surrey's investigation into the Milly Dowler case. From Sussex Police, Kevin Moore leads the review.
It was a mess. Not to put too fine a point on it. It wasn't being run as I would expect an investigation of that size to be run. There were no clear lines of inquiry. The alarm bells start to ring because you then start to think, well, where is this heading? How are we going to get this back on track to where it should be, to where I would expect it to be?
But just before Kevin Moore publishes his report, there is a dramatic development in the case. 20 miles away, a couple are foraging for mushrooms when they make the discovery that everyone has been dreading.
Between the M3 and the A30 near Fleet in Hampshire, scenes of crime officers and a variety of scientists have been examining human remains throughout the day. This evening, the results of early tests brought the unavoidable bad news.
Our worst fears have been confirmed, and I can now tell you that the search for Milly has changed from a missing person inquiry into a murder investigation.
Kevin Knight and Sue Day from Surrey Police remember that dark day.
Milly wasn't found for 6 months. It could have been years, or never, I suppose, because it is so... It's not a natural place to go walking through that bit of woodland there because of the river here or the stream here. Yeah, it's somewhere in here.
When you come to a scene where somebody has been found and they've been murdered, it's a very strange feeling where no matter how many people are there, it goes very quiet.
Even now, I wouldn't want to go over there now, so...
Not really?
No, I'm quite just stay our distance from this distance and look, look in there. I wouldn't want to wander over there now.
No.
So, that was her sort of final resting place to a certain extent, and hence why we just look from a distance here, really.
Milly's family would have had that awful realisation that this was it. It was the end of their hope journey, if you like. It's drawn a line under that hope. It's gone from this point onwards.
It was honestly the worst day ever. Yeah, it was just awful. Just, yeah, really upsetting, really upsetting. There was an element of relief that she'd at least been found, because we could have been in a position where we never found her, but obviously then the heartache of obviously knowing that she was never going to be coming back, and then it's going down the route of Milly's no longer alive. What do we do now? When I'd look out my bedroom window, the North Star was always there, and I'd always talk to it as if it were Milly. I kind of just held on to that, and I think my parents would think that I was maybe like crying myself to sleep, but I wasn't. I was crying to Milly, talking to Milly, and that helped me a lot, actually, just to have some connection to her. But nothing prepares you for that. Why Milly? Why there? Why on that day? And there's only so many times you could tell yourself, like, in the wrong place at the wrong time. But it would have been somebody else.
Because now it's clear that Milly's killer is still out there. A killer who has evaded a huge police search. A killer who may strike again.
And that's horrible to think that that person was on the streets.
It's almost a year since Milly Dowler was abducted and murdered. But Surrey police are no closer to catching her killer.
Come on. Hi. Hello. Hello.
But just a few miles away, on a patch overseen by the Metropolitan Police, a series of brutal attacks on young women is about to offer a whole new line of inquiry into the mystery of Milly Dowler.
These were the worst attacks happening literally on your doorstep.
5 miles from Walton-on-Thames, a female student is violently assaulted.
It became apparent that a young girl, Marsha McDonnell, had been the victim of a really, really nasty assault with a blunt instrument and had sadly died. I believe she'd had a night out, and somewhere between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. had suffered a fatal assault literally yards from her home address. There was nothing, there were no fibres found, there was nothing left at the scene that would provide any clues. Whoever had done this had either done it before or certainly had made all the right preparations in order to avoid being captured.
No one is charged with Marsha McDonnell's murder. Then, 18 months later, it happens again. Less than 2 miles from the last attack, a young French woman is assaulted.
Throughout the day, specialist teams have been searching for clues that might help them trace the person who killed Emily de Lagrange. The 22-year-old was subjected to a ferocious assault as she was walking home after a night out with friends. She suffered extensive head wounds after being set upon whilst crossing Twickenham Green. The attack occurred just yards away.
Emily was drinking in Twickenham town centre with some friends. She boarded a bus in Twickenham town centre and should have actually got off the bus to get to her house, which was over there at the bus stop there. But for whatever reason, she missed her bus stop. We then know that she walked back up Hampton Road. We found her on CCTV. And as she's got to the Green, she's cut across Twickenham Green here to get to her home address. And this is the point when she was attacked. We had a girl that had been murdered, and we simply had no idea who had done it.
The same team that dealt with Marsha was also given Emily de Lagrange. And when you look at the bare bones of the facts, that you've got 2 young, blonde girls, local to Twickenham, both killed by blunt force instrument, that would be enough to put the hair up on the back of your neck immediately. The 2 jobs were linked together. Potentially there was a serial killer.
The chances of more than one individual operating in the same area in the same way are, quite frankly, beyond belief.
When you're dealing with a serial killer, time is absolutely of the essence, and you know that if you don't apprehend this person, someone else is going to die. I don't think there's ever been a serial killer that said, oh, I think I've had enough now and I'm not doing any more. So apprehending them is the only way to stop them.
The race to find a serial killer is on. Police know that victims Amélie de Lagrange and Marsha McDonnell had both got off London buses in the moments before they were attacked.
It wouldn't have been another random bus passenger because the team would have seen that someone had to be following both girls within a vehicle.
The guys and girls that were working on that had literally thousands of hours of CCTV to view.
You know, nothing can be missed. Every single second of footage.
Static CCTV, police car CCTV, and importantly, bus CCTV. Bus CCTV also captures what's happening outside the bus, and it was through bus CCTV that we found the white van.
We were able to ascertain that it was a white Ford Courier van, and that was pretty much all we had to go on.
How many white vans are running around London?
Thousands.
Almost 25,000 white vans need to be investigated.
Police told us some new info about the inquiry. They want to find a small white van seen in and around Twickenham Green the night Amélie was murdered. That's where she was beaten to death after a night out.
I was then tasked to carry out P&C checks on every single vehicle. So I personally checked 1,800 of them.
The enormity of the task wasn't lost on anybody.
As the Met race to find their killer, back in Surrey, the Milly Dowler inquiry is faltering.
2 years is a long time in a murder investigation where you haven't got anything to work on. Even where Milly's body was found, there was no DNA, no fingerprints, there was no murder weapon. Her clothing wasn't found, her property wasn't found, her school bag wasn't found. Nothing was ever found, so there was nothing to go on in that line of it.
We just didn't feel that when we went out to do inquiries that anything that we did was an encouraging lead, because you just knew that it wasn't really getting us anywhere.
But you just kept continuing, you're always looking for that piece of the jigsaw that will open up a new line of inquiries, or that golden nugget that you're looking for. It was a very challenging investigation. You do wonder where it's going to go, or if it ever will get solved.
Meanwhile, on Fleet Street, more and more questions are being asked about dubious practices, especially at the News of the World. For decades, the paper was the popular choice on a Sunday. In the early 2000s, it's still winning the circulation wars, breaking scoop after scoop. But little do its journalists know that the seeds of its destruction have already been sown. and it all started with a raid on a private detective agency in South London. Authorities had been waiting to pounce on one firm suspected of data theft on a grand scale. Lead investigator Alec Owens was there when they struck.
When we did the raid, I was just walking around, just looking at things on desks, not examining them, just glancing at them, when I saw a couple of bundles of documents that caught my eye. And they were a long list of number plate numbers. There was one number, and at the side of it had been clearly marked, protected number. And it could relate to a member of the royal family's private car, cars used for undercover work. And that worried me. That set the alarm bells ringing. Even DVLA aren't allowed to access the details of this number. And that's when we identified Steve Whittemore. He was the one that had asked for that number to be checked.
Steve Whittemore was a private investigator supplying information to multiple British newspapers, including the News of the World. Alec's investigation was stepped up. They called it Operation Motorman. Whittemore's house was next to be raided. Inside, they found thousands of documents and 4 large books crammed with damning evidence of just how the papers got their scoops.
On opening them, you could see a news group, an actual newspaper, the name of a journalist, and then a request for a service.
Although some of the data requests were legal, many were not. These secret files showed corrupt public officials providing Whittemore with social security records, ex-directory numbers, and even files from the police national computer. All available to journalists paying for Whittemore's services.
There were 17,500 requests, 310 identified journalists.
Alec's revelations blew the lid off just how journalists got many of their stories, not just on celebrities, but on the likes of Milly Dowler too.
We found several names in there that corresponded with victims of crime and murders. Sarah Payne and Milly Dowler, detailed relation to her family. Their addresses and telephone numbers were in there as well. Information you couldn't get lawfully.
Alec Owens and Operation Motorman had discovered the smoking gun. Whittemore and others were convicted, but the journalists who were paying for the information were off the hook. The power of the press once again prevailed. And Alec says he was warned against going public with the findings.
You're not to go near the press was the message. The first thing I said was, you're joking. How can I not go to the press? You know, they're the ones committing the crime. You know, it's like seeing somebody shot in the street and not going and taking a gun off the person who had it in his hand.
Alec's boss later said he didn't remember telling him to back off and denied he would have said that.
You can't discover something like that and not do anything about it. That's all I'd like to say on that.
It's September 2004. Police investigating the brutal murder of Amélie Delagrange on Twickenham Green in southwest London are desperate for people to come forward. A week after the attack, a woman walks into the police station.
It was after Amélie Delagrange had been killed that I went into the incident room on Twickenham Green and gave my statement.
What did you say?
That I think I know who might have killed her.
When Johanna Collings hears about the murder of Amélie Delagrange, there is only one thing on her mind. The one man she knows is capable of committing the crime.
when they asked me, why do you think you know who might have killed her? And I said, because my kid's father, my ex-boyfriend, is violent. He hates blondes. He knows the area very well. And he drives a white van because he's a wheel clamper.
And what was his name?
My ex-partner's name was Levi Bellfield.
Jo wasn't just suspicious, she was convinced.
I think I did quite enough by coming forward and doing what I did. It's not revenge, it's putting a stop. I mean, how many more people needed to die before he would stop? Because he wouldn't have stopped, would he? Because he was gearing up to more.
Bellfield became our main suspect. Bear in mind, he's from the area, he knows the area. His girlfriend said he had a white Ford Courier van. His girlfriend described the type of person he was. And at that point, everybody thought, yeah.
My mum hated Levi from the first day because she could see through him and she didn't like him. I think she saw that he was evil and control him. A few times she said to me that he was vile and I know what's happening, but you won't admit it. And you always brush it off because you don't want to admit to your mum, especially in her own house, that you're being abused. You don't want to admit to anyone.
It gave a picture of what Bellfield was like with the people he lived with and the type of person he was, and made him clearly a dangerous individual. And certainly in my mind, an individual that was capable of doing the things that we were looking at.
With Bellfield in the frame, police prepare to bring him in. But it needs careful planning.
When they knew that he had a number of bolt holes that he could go to. He was often on the move, he had numerous women, he had plenty of other friends and associates he could go and hole up with. So they'd had a surveillance team working on him to make sure that he was at a known location. So they traced him here to Little Benty's in West Drayton, and they decided to put the strike in on the morning of November the 22nd.
But just as they are finalising their plans, there is an unwelcome development in the shape of the News of the World.
The problem was aggravated by the News of the World on the Friday afternoon, saying, we know that this man, Levi Bellfield, is your suspect and that you're going to arrest him on Monday morning and we're going to do a story about it on Sunday. Throughout my service, I'd be aware of tactics the press would use in terms of and how they obtain information sometimes. But I'd never experienced it in an investigation I was involved in, where we were forced to change the plan because of what they were going to do.
Was there a leak?
They were told by someone, yeah. Yeah.
There always have been leaks from within the police station. In some places I've worked, there's been more holes in it than a colander. And you can guarantee in some places that virtually as soon as something breaks, the media will have it. Now, the only way they can get that is through a police officer.
The police cut a deal. In exchange for not printing the story and tipping Bellfield off that they were onto him, the police allow News of the World journalists to accompany them when they make their decisive move.
The police came here at 5:30 in the morning. They were about 30-strong party. They'd already done a lot of surveillance on Bellfield to make sure that he was going to be in the house. This was the critical moment. They crashed the front door, they put the front and back doors in, and there was no sign of Bellfield. So it was only a question of sort of taking the place apart. They looked in all the obvious places, in every nook and cranny, cupboard, every room, under beds, whatever. There was still no sign of him, and that really left only one other possibility, which was there was a loft hatch which was closed, so they got a ladder, they got up into the loft hatch, and under the loft insulation, there he was, stark naked.
The police had their man. The press had their story.
They were obviously there when we brought him out the house, and there's photographs of me in the back of the car with him handcuffed.
Then, around the same time as Bellfield's arrest, a fact emerges that presents police with a shocking new possibility.
When we had Bellfield as our suspect, we would look at all vehicles, all addresses he'd been throughout all these times, and one of the addresses come up was Collingwood Place. The hairs literally stood up on the back of my neck. It was literally yards from where Milly Dowler was last seen to where Bellfield was living at that time.
Bellfield is the Metropolitan Police's suspect. Now the Met rushes to contact Surrey Police, whose own investigation into Milly's murder has more or less ground to a halt. The crucial evidence about Bellfield's old address might be the breakthrough Surrey desperately needs.
I text my colleague Sue Day to let her know that we'd got a new line of inquiry, and we decided we would spend that morning and just drive down to Collingwood Place just to see where it was and get a feel for the area and see where this guy lived. As you approach the front of the flats, there's just a gap between the hedges. And we walked up to the ground floor flat where he was living and looked back, and you can just see a gap in the hedge, and it goes on to Station Avenue.
I don't think we even spoke, me and Kev, because it was a realisation of how close Bellfield was to where Milly had last been seen, where she'd gone missing. And it was quite chilling, really. It was quite an eerie feeling. It sent me cold, to be honest.
We'd both sort of had that moment of standing there thinking, this is where it's going to change, this investigation.
But by the time of Milly's disappearance in 2002, one newspaper later claimed police had received 93 complaints about Bellfield for offences including sexual assault and physical attacks. The newspaper alleged that police never cross-checked these complaints. But amazingly, in spite of all that, they could have caught him anyway, in the earliest days of the investigation.
Surrey Police had done intense inquiries in this area at the time of her disappearance. And in fact, the flat here in Collingwood Place had actually been visited 11 times by Surrey officers doing house-to-house inquiries. But because they never got a reply, so they never made that crucial link.
They went back there at least 11 times and knocked on the door, and there was never any reply.
If at the time they'd been able to join up all the dots, it probably would have taken them to Bellfield, and it could have led to his arrest much earlier, and that could have, saved a lot of other people being attacked by him.
It was missed, and it was a mistake that was done, yeah.
Sussex Police carried out 2 reviews of Surrey Police's investigation, but had not identified significant failings. We must accept that mistakes were made. Having said that, even a perfect initial investigation may not have identified Bellfield as a suspect. It's been long, complex and challenging, and taken many years of painstaking detective work.
Surrey Police finally have a prime suspect for the murder of Milly Dowler, but all the evidence is circumstantial. Bellfield is now on remand for Amélie Delagrange's murder and other crimes. But when it comes to Milly, he isn't talking.
Did you, Levi Bellfield, have anything to do with the kidnap and murder of Milly Dowler?
No comment.
You didn't deny it?
No comment.
You didn't say, it's not me?
No comment.
And at no stage over the last 2 days have you denied any involvement in these offences?
No comment.
Why is that, Levi?
No comment.
Police are certain they have the right man, but now they need to prove it. Slowly but surely.
Like a jigsaw puzzle, crucial clues were dropping into place. This is Copenhagen Way, which led around to Collingwood Place, and this little turning was going to play a crucial role in the inquiry. They discover that Levi Bellfield, one of his little money-earning schemes is car dealing. He's changing cars regularly, and they've done a deep search into all the different vehicles he might have owned over several years. And they discovered then that one of the vehicles that he had access to was a red-coloured Daewoo Nexia saloon car.
The man who tried to abduct schoolgirl Rachel Cowles the day before Milly disappeared also drove a red saloon.
They had to review all the CCTV right from the start again. The people that were doing it, suddenly they're looking at CCTV with fresh eyes.
Police look again at footage they'd had all along. They widen the search.
We're not only looking for a missing 13-year-old schoolgirl, suddenly we're looking for Levi Bellfield.
When the police reviewed the CCTV footage from the Bird's Eye building, a car was seen emerging from this turning right here, about 20 minutes after Milly was last seen.
And that's when the CCTV captures the red day.
With the red Daewoo, police are inching closer to linking Bellfield to Milly's abduction. If they can connect him to the site where Milly's body was found, they might just have him. In 2006, Levi Bellfield is charged with the murders of Amélie Delagrange, Marsha McDonnell, and the attempted murder of a third young woman, Kate Sheedy. At the same time, Surrey police are trying to find a link between Bellfield and the site where Milly Dowler's body was found.
Come on, boys, quick. Yeah, this is the old gate. Look at it, bless it. Oh, it's still secure as ever.
When Jo Collings was living with Levi Bellfield, she spent her weekends here, show jumping.
It was the place that everyone came to. I mean, this field here used to be the clear round ring, so that was like your practice area. He was always so proud of, if the horses went well, he loved it. He was really proud, and he'd tell everyone. He was always involved, and he always wanted to come to the shows as well.
Milly was found in Yateley Woods, and we asked Jo, does that area mean anything to you? And she said, well, yes, I go to Yateley Horse Show every weekend, and he knows it very well.
So we came down for her to point it out to us where she was doing her show jumping. And then whilst we were there, she said that, he wouldn't stay here all the time. He would just go off and take the dogs over the other side of the road. So we went, OK, so can you show us there?
Boys, come on.
And as we walked into the woods, she just got closer and closer.
We got to a point where she said we'd normally walk this far and then turn back. And myself and Sue Day looked at each other, and Jo had obviously clocked that we'd looked at each other, and she went, was this where Milly was found? It wasn't very, very far away. We were talking a few hundred yards away.
It's an awful, awful feeling. To know that I was that close and that I'd been there before, it's heartbreaking.
What other reason would he know the area? Because you would need to know the area to know where it would be safe to hide a body. And that was a breakthrough.
The evidence is stacking up against Bellfield, but it is another woman, Emma Mills, his partner at the time of Milly's abduction, who gives investigators vital information. Sifting through her account of that fateful day, officers realise they are staring at the final piece of the jigsaw.
Emma Mills was able to tell police about Bellfield's movements on the day, the evening that Milly Dowler went missing, which was absolutely crucial to the investigation.
The red Daewoo from the CCTV was hers. Emma said Bellfield was out all day. He had the red Daewoo's keys and the Collingwood Place flat keys on the same keyring. He got home at 11 p.m, but got up again at 3:30 a.m, he said, to return to Collingwood Place alone.
You automatically, as a detective, thinking, what's he going back to do? Was he going back there to tidy the flat up? Was he going back to move a body?
She went over to Collingwood Place, and as soon as she walked in, she noticed that all the bedding was off the bed, and he said that the dog had messed on the bed, and she challenged him on where he'd put all the sheets, and he said he'd thrown them into the bin.
She didn't believe him. Her belief was that he had probably had another woman back at the flat, and because she was suspicious, she went and checked the bin store, and also there was no bed sheets in the bin store out there.
The Red Dayu, the clean-up of Collingwood Place, intimate knowledge of Yateley Woods. It is enough. 9 years after the murder of Milly Dowler, Levi Bellfield will face a judge and jury.
I came here just before that trial started. Around the back is the flat where the murder actually took place. And I do remember the terrible feeling of looking in the bedroom and thinking, you know, that I was not remote from this anymore. It stayed with me forever.
Bellfield is already serving a life sentence for the murders of Amélie Delagrange and Marcia McDonnell. Now, in 2011, at the Old Bailey, he is back in court, charged with the murder of Milly Dowler.
It was really important to me. I had to be there, yeah. We were so involved in myself and Kev, so involved with the witnesses. It just became very personal.
The clerk of the court stood up and said, "Have you all reached a unanimous verdict?" And they said yes.
The verdict is in. Guilty.
When the verdict came in, it was such a massive reaction from both of us, I think.
It was an explosion of emotion, this is the only way to describe it, of just from everyone, from family, friends, police officers, press. I've never known anything like it.
It just seems so harrowing that someone's taken someone from you and that it's caused all of this. I'm angry that he did it and got away with it for so long and actually then went on to hurt more people. And I think that's what's really upsetting, is that more people got hurt after that.
There is another accused in the dock that year, with Milly's story at the heart of the matter. Less than 2 weeks after Bellfield's trial, the Guardian newspaper breaks the story that the News of the World hacked Milly Dowler's voicemail. 3 days later, owner Rupert Murdoch announces that the newspaper will close for good.
I would just like to say, this is the most humble day of my life.
Just turning into what was the News International plant, and that's where the News of the World were. It was the temple of the cult in every sense of the word. What you've seen here now defines the end of the News of the World. That's it. It was there, it no longer is, it's gone.
Mr. Speaker, the whole country has been appalled by the disclosures about phone hacking. Given the gravity of what has occurred, will the Prime Minister support the calls for a full, independent, public inquiry to take place as soon as practical into the culture and practices of British newspapers?
Let me be very clear. Yes, we do need to have an inquiry. It is absolutely disgusting at what has taken place.
There is a new report commissioned by the government dealing with concerns about the press. It was sparked by public revulsion about a single act, the hacking of the mobile phone of a murdered teenager.
Milly Dowler's parents are key witnesses.
A free press in a democracy holds power to account. But, with a few honourable exceptions, the UK press has not performed that vital role in the case of its own power, as the evidence has shown beyond doubt. On too many occasions, those responsibilities have simply been ignored. There must be change.
There's always been a picture of Milly in the incident room, and it was always a 13-year-old schoolgirl. When we eventually got to court, all her school friends that we'd always seen as 12, 13-year-olds, these schoolgirls were women now, and they were 21-year-old women and had careers, and I think it's suddenly that brought it home, really, that, you know, Milly had missed out on all that.
Getting married, buying a house, having children, it's a constant reminder. I can imagine that's quite hard for the Dowlers to see. They are the strongest people I have ever met. They really are wonderful people. It would be very hard to forget Milly. Just the short years that I knew her have given me wonderful memories that I'll hold dear forever.